Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're going to look at what makes an inexpensive reel inexpensive, right, or cheap. I don't use cheap much. Cheap seems to indicate that you didn't get any quality. An inexpensive reel to me is one that is built for a different purpose. In this case, we're going to look at a Hurricane. It's a 60 size reel. It's got a single ball bearing construction to it. The reel is intended for novice use or light use. A lot of times here on the Atlantic seaboard, a person will buy this for occasional use. Maybe they're going on a vacation. Maybe they got some people coming over to their house, and you're going to go down to the shore or the beach, and you're going to do some casting or teach somebody how to fish, and you really don't want to make a large investment for fear that either it won't be used much or that the interest will wane and it'll just go sit somewhere. I actually picked this one up at a local tag sale, garage sale, yard sale, whatever the words are where you're viewing this from. And I would say somebody bought this, put it on a pole, probably bought it as a combination, had it on the pole, didn't use it, and decided after a year or 2 or 10 to just go ahead and sell it because it was suffering from disuse. So we'll take a look at this reel. I'll show you some of the comparisons. And so what makes a reel inexpensive? The first thing overall we can look at this reel is that it's plastic. It's not metal casing, not even graphite casing, it's plastic. So what happens with plastic? This is a plastic spool. It's a hard plastic spool. It can shatter, break, crack, especially novices if they whack it on a pier railing or something to that effect. I've seen them crack. And also if they're stored in hot places or near hot stuff, they can warp. So plastic is by far cheap, or less expensive material to make a reel from, but it serves its purpose. If you don't subject to that abuse, it's okay. All right, I'm going to look at the drag setup first, just because I have the spool available. We'll go ahead and pull this. There's a clip that holds these in place, and being it's a plastic spool, most of these have a metal spool which will provide a good backing for the drags to catch. In this case, they use a thin metal wafer here to kind of almost like a spring component. It's not a flat washer, but I guess that's going to grab the plastic. Next they have, well, in this case we only have one washer, one felt washer. So the next would be the tab, and then the felt washer. Now felt washers are okay. They're the lower end. They're not Carbonex. They're not a fiber washer, but they'll get the job done. And then the last one we have is the metal washer. That's the cap that goes in, and then we're going to go ahead and grab that retaining clip. We're going to put that right back in. Now that's a spring. It sits in a groove, and as you'll notice, I am using my fingers to make sure that that spring doesn't shoot out anywhere. Okay, that's the first part. All right, now we'll go up top. Let's look at the rotor here. The rotor is also a plastic rotor, so the whole body of this reel is going to be plastic. This clip is a metal clip. It looks like it's chromed. It's got some bubbling on it, so it's probably not the highest level of that. I'm going to put all these pieces in a parts bucket. If you're repairing reels, I always suggest if you're taking pieces out, put them in a central location, and the parts bucket is a good one. In this case, I just used the bottom of a milk jug as my parts holder. And here's a case where the reel comes out with the traditional white threaded, which means you turn counterclockwise to remove this. And this reel is clean inside. I would say it was not used much. And it's got a single ball bearing here, which is good. In some cases, they will make these reels that have all bushings. I'm just going to go ahead and oil that bearing while I have this off. And another quality kind of a componentry, this is a steel pinion gear as opposed to a brass pinion gear. So you're seeing where the manufacturer can make economies to keep the cost of the reel low And again, it's always going to do what you bought it for. So if you bought it as an entry-level reel for a novice or an occasional fishing expedition, then this is fine. You got to be aware that it needs the maintenance that any reel will need in terms of oiling and cleaning, for sure. And that's what I'm showing you here, is how to do the maintenance as we go ahead and look at the components. So I'm going to finish that top end back off before we go down to the gear side. I'm not going to reinstall the spool because we're going to have to pull that shaft to get at the gears. So I'm just putting this last set screw back in, and that set screw keeps the rotor nut locked. So as the reel spins, the nut doesn't come loose. And those of you that watch my videos know I have a little bit of trouble with small screws, and that's this point of the video where I'm having some trouble. So just bear with me. We'll get this back in. And you should keep an assortment of tools. You should anticipate what you're going to need. Keep them on the bench, and or bring them out from your normal toolboxes or whatever, so that they're close at hand. That'll enable you to complete the repairs or the servicing relatively quickly. And it's also going to enable you to keep your mind focused on where the action is, because if you lay down a reel, you lay down a piece in a certain location, you may not be able to come back or remember the sequences you took that out. All right, continuing on the inexpensive piece of this. These are rough threaded or plastic threaded as opposed to machine threaded. These are steel. They have some rust on the top as opposed to a stainless steel screw that you'll find in the higher end reels. All right, so we're going to take the 4 pieces of this off, and we'll go underneath. Now this reel's in good shape. I would say it hasn't been used much. I don't see any evidence of abuse and chips and cracks and the like. But I do see that the components do not measure up with a higher priced reel. All right, so in order to get at the gearing, we want to take the shaft out, and the reason for that is there's a crosswind block and reel. On the crosswind block is driven by a backside gear, and that shaft sits between the 2 gears. So if you don't take the shaft out, you can't get the main gear out. All right, this I can't tell if this is a stainless shaft. I would bet against it, but I don't have a magnet to tell at the moment. But this shaft is in good condition. There's no signs of rust, so this reel has been cared for. Okay, we have a main gear here. I'm going to check the teeth. We're okay with that. Check the teeth on the back side. Note that this one has a little plastic clip with a V in it. That plastic clip is used on the anti-reverse mechanism, and when we go to reinstall, we need to make sure that that tab there sits inside this V groove here, otherwise the anti-reverse will not work. Some other configurations for this would have a hole in here and a little wire spring that comes out that would get loaded into a hole on that tab. So you just have to be careful about that. So this reel is well lubed and it's cleaned, so I'm not going to go much further on this. Noting here we have another example. So we said this is steel, on the higher end it's brass. Now we've got bushings that are plastic bushings. So here's a plastic bushing here. Here's a plastic bushing here. On the more intermediate reels, these would be brass bushings, and then of course on the higher end reels they would be bearings. A lot of people say, you know, what's the optimal bearings on a reel? I would say at a minimum it's 3 if you're going to get into paying for an investment. You want a bearing on each side of this main gear, and you want a bearing up top where we saw the bearing on this one. This reel has got good lubrication on it, so I don't need to lubricate it. If I did, I would use a Penn precision grease or any other reel grease. This is a blue grease, and I would make sure that that the teeth on the pinion gear, the teeth on the back of this one, and the teeth on the crosswind gear are all well lubricated. Okay, and People also ask me a lot of times what what is the differences in the greases. Well, you want to get a grease that's made for fishing reels. I've seen people use Vaseline, and we always get a laugh out of that, but it is a petroleum jelly. It's a very light-based petroleum jelly, and it rinses off, washes out way too quickly. Don't use that. I've also seen people use automotive greases, and they don't work well because they're too thick. And the problem that we have with the thick ones is that they collect contamination, they bog the performance of the reel down. Okay, we're going to take this now, we're going to reinsert that, making sure that the V is over the crosswind, the anti-reverse mechanism here. And to do that, it's simply eyeballing it. So you're going to just go ahead and line that up as you're pressing your main gear in. And we can go ahead and reinstall this shaft. And again, this is a clean example. This is a nice, nice garage sale find. And like I said, it'll do what it's expected to do, which is novice, entry level, light fishing loads. So this is not a daily fishing reel. Keep it clean, keep it lubricated, and it'll last you, and it'll do that. So, I've had people tell me, oh man, I've had these reels, they're great reels. And then I get underneath, I say, well, how much do you fish? Well, I go down the shore on a vacation every summer. I bring the reel with me, and we go make a day or two of it doing some surf fishing. Well, of course, that reel should last you a lifetime. It's only 2 or 3 trips. Over the course of 5 years, you've only used the reel 10 times, if you will. So, but again, it serves the purpose. Why go buy a $50 or $60 or an $80 reel for that purpose? If this is going to land a fish, and quite honestly, the fish don't care what the reel is on the other side of the pole. It's not what's attracting them to bite and hit your bait or your lures. This will land the fish just as well. Will it be as smooth as a 5 or a 7 ball bearing reel? No. Will it take some additional abuse? Probably not. But it will serve its purpose. And if you're teaching a youngster how to go cast a reel off of a pier or a boat or off the surf, here's another example. This is a steel shaft, and it's got rust because it hasn't been cleaned here as well. So, so you're seeing, right? Plastic body, not graphite, not metal. Limited ball bearings to 1. Plastic bushings, not brass bushings. Plastic spool, not metal spool. All of those things compromise the quality of the reel, but not necessarily the integrity of the reel. So it's a good reel for its purpose. As long as you know what your purpose is and it doesn't change, it'll last you a long time. And if you don't use it, then you really haven't spent a lot of time or money or effort to figure out that you either don't have the time or the desire to do the fishing, and you can move on without feeling that you've made an investment that you'll never get a return on. Okay, here we go. So, good reel for the price. It's a Hurricane. It's a 60 size reel. It'll certainly pay dividends to the folks that use the reel, and I would say it's a nice reel for the price. So hope that's helped explain some of the differences and why a reel can be a $20 reel and not a $50 or a $100 reel. Some of the pros and cons of each, the applications and uses of it, and why those things are popular in the marketplace. So if you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to my channel as I post frequently. And I thank you for viewing it. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.